Hello, my name is Hannah Lambert. In this semester, I studied American Sign Language with a focus on deaf culture and how they interact. My desire to take directed studies goes back to about a year ago when I started studying sign language with Missy Price and Henry Clark, as seen in the picture, and they allowed me to understand that I had a passion for sign language and the deaf culture, and that's why I wanted to take directed studies so I could learn more about their culture. Although I knew that I wanted to study sign language, I did not know what I wanted to study exactly. It became very difficult for me to come up with my objectives because there are so many things that I realized I could study, whether it be signs, grammar, or deaf culture. This was probably the hardest part of my project. However, with the help of Miss Bolton and Miss Finko, I was able to come up with 10 solid objectives that were specific enough for me to study, but kind of gave me a little leeway to explore a little bit more about sign language that I may not have known. And this brought me to my first project, which was about the deaf culture over time and how it's changed throughout history. And I think the thing I was most shocked by was how deaf were pushed aside all throughout history and were not allowed to participate in religious ceremonies or even be a part of society as a whole. And it's really cool to see how that has changed in recent years. My next product was learning the alphabet and its purposes and uses. And the thing that I thought was really cool is that it's not just, sign language isn't built around finger spelling, it's built around signs, and you use finger spelling whenever there isn't a sign for something, such as the name of a store or when you're labeling something, or even to add emphasis, you would finger spell it instead of signing it. Along with learning the alphabet, I also spent some time studying the sentence structure of sign language, and I also spent time learning some more vocab words combined with what I've been learning for the past year. And through that, I decided I would sign a story for you all, and that's what's coming up next. My name's Hannah. I want to tell you about my favorite time of year. What is it? Christmas. I love Christmas. I really enjoy the Christmas tree and decorating it. The more I studied sign language, the more I realized there was a whole other component to it, which was the interpreter, who was kind of the liaison between hearing and deaf people. And I realized that there are many rules and an etiquette behind interpreting that's very unique to deaf culture and to the deaf world. As an interpreter, there are many important things to remember as you're representing the deaf culture, to always be dressed for the occasion, dressed professionally and clean and taking care of yourself, but also to be prepared mentally by arriving early and asking for any outlines that the speaker may have on what they are speaking on. There are many things to remember when interpreting, and the first of these is to always have good facial expressions that are matching what the speaker is saying. As we saw in the Nelson Mandela ceremonies, the interpreter was faulty in this area and broke the number one rule of interpreting and set a prime example of what not to do. After thoroughly studying the language, I wanted to start to go more in depth with the cultural aspect of the deaf world and how that affects their communication. The first place that I wanted to analyze within the deaf culture was how deaf interact with other deaf, and it was really interesting to me to see how different it is from how hearing interact with hearing, and how one simple thing such as not being able to hear can affect an entire culture. When deaf interact with other deaf, it is very different than when a deaf person interacts with a hearing person. When the deaf interact with each other, they have almost a slang that they're able to use that doesn't translate really well into English. So therefore, when deaf and hearing are together, it's harder. There's more of a communication barrier than with deaf interacting with each other. Deaf interaction with hearing is a completely different being than deaf interacting with deaf. This is because when deaf and hearing interact, there's not as much as a common ground other than the fact that they both know sign language, and it can be harder for deaf to communicate clearly what they're trying to get across because they almost have to dumb down what they want to say. After I finished researching interactions between deaf and deaf and deaf and hearing, I wanted to get more of a sense of what the culture differences were like in general, and I found there were many, but the thing that I always had to remember is that you're dealing with two people who come from different backgrounds, and when you live in a hearing world, deaf have to do things differently. The thing I never realized about deaf culture is that it is a very lonely place to be, being deaf. Not many people, you're not surrounded by the welcome of music or welcome with a hello necessarily every time you walk in the room. So therefore, their welcomes and goodbyes are so important to their culture, and many times they are much longer than they are in the hearing world. That's all I learned conceptually this year, but I also learned so much more about myself and about who I am as a person when it comes to work ethic. I learned a lot about time management and how to persevere even on the days when you don't want to work, and I especially got to learn a lot about other people and their projects. Whether it was completing an obstacle course or debating random things on group days on Fridays, this semester has been so much fun, and I've really enjoyed getting to know everybody more and really having a good group of friends to be around, to work around, and looking forward to next semester. And speaking of next semester, I have no idea what I'm going to study yet. I put a lot of thought into it, but then again, it's Christmas break, so I've got plenty of time to think about it. But I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and I hope you all have a great break.